My name is John Patton. Boys and girls, I have an amazing guest. I know I say it every single damn time, but I have an amazing guest this week. But first, I got to talk about the sponsors. Go to vertex.com, use the code TGC, get yourself a discount, get yourself a bag. They just came out with the new duffel bags in the travel series. It's called the Road Less Traveled RLT series. Go get yourself one. Use the code TGC. It'll save you at least 15% off. Now, I am joined by the man, the myth, the legend, Kash Patel. Kash, how are you, buddy?
Hey, I'm great, and it was so fun to sync with y'all in Knoxville, and now look, we're here chatting. Who knows what's going to happen?
Dude, I'm really excited. I really appreciate you coming on here. I know you're very, very busy. For the people that may not be familiar, because I wasn't before I met you, can you give us the 30-second version of what you actually do? Can you compress it that much?
Yeah, I'll give you 3 seconds. I don't do anything. No, without putting your audience to sleep. 16 years in government service, started as a public defender, became a national security prosecutor, civilian at JSOC, and then this Russiagate thing happened, and some guy named Devin Nunes was like, hey, you should run it. And I was like, that's a terrible idea. And I did, and Russiagate happened, and then went to the White House, ran counterterrorism, and finished off under Trump administration as Deputy Director of National Intelligence and later Chief of Staff at DOD.
Dude, that is wild. Did you ever think when you started that you would be working for the president?
No, I'm not. Listen, I went to law school to be the guy in suits. I wanted to go make money. I wanted Michael Jordan as my client. Like, forget these losers in government. And, God's got a different plan, a best laid plan. So it worked out for me, but it was a good lesson learned.
We got a chance to talk over the weekend when we were in Knoxville together, and the first thing that came to mind is, holy shit, this guy isn't a normal government douchebag.
I'll take that, man. I'll take it. I don't want to be.
It's amazing how many people get so far up their own asses that they can't see what's going on. However, you were there to try and work with us in collaboration and learn and have discussions about the future of gun rights in the U.S. And I think we had some great discussion there. Can you answer me a question? I'm going to ask you a difficult question that I think a lot of my audience, and we did talk about this a little bit, but is Donald Trump pro-gun?
Yeah. I mean, I can't speak for the man, but every time I'm around him and every time we take gun issues up or two-way issues or however you want to phrase them, Donald Trump is one of the strongest supporters of the Second Amendment there is. And like I told your group when I met y'all, one, it was an incredibly learning experience for me because I'm not the two-way expert. I'm a guy who loves the Constitution and owns guns and firearms, but you guys are in it way more than I did. So I was learning a lot of information there from the experts. And I learned a thing or two that I needed to take back to my boss, who is currently, I'm a senior advisor for national security. So it's a two-way street. I think getting that intel in to be like, oh, that makes sense. I didn't think of it. I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't know 2 million people cared about that. It's probably on me more than it is on him. I'm supposed to be figuring this stuff out. He's got to run an entire presidential campaign. So, and it's like I told your crew, listen, we're never going to agree 100% on everything. It ain't going to happen. It just ain't going to happen. And we can either get a lot of what we want or we can get none of what we want. And it's a hard choice personally to make, to say, hey, sacrifice some of your convictions for the greater good. That is hard, man. I know
that's very difficult. I mean, most gun owners have become, at least I would say most gun enthusiasts have become absolutists in recent years. It's all or nothing. What do you say to that type of person?
I think, unfortunately, the group that I met in Knoxville for Gun Owners America was one of the most informed subject matter expert groups, whatever the subject is, that I've ever encountered. And I do these events all the time. I mean, you guys actually had like facts, and you might as well have equations on the wall. You guys are dialed in. And so it was super informative. Look, I'm an old lawyer. I'm a guy that used to work at DOJ back in the day. I subscribe to the Constitution and law. And, our Second Amendment right is literally inked into the Constitution. I mean, it's pretty powerful stuff. Unfortunately, people have politicized that amendment for political gain. Mostly the radical left, they're out there saying guns kill people. Well, sure, it's a part of the equation. But the problem is the lunatics that you give these guns to unlawfully, they're the ones killing people, not the people. And by the way, let's not punish those who are lawfully using firearms like the Constitution says. And so this is a perfect example of a completely weaponized issue that should be pretty neutral. And then it goes up to the courts, and then we get some, I think we've had some pretty good victories overall. Agreed. For Second Amendments. So I think that's informative and it drives the message, but it's only going to inflame the left, especially during their DNC. I'm sure one of their talking points is going to be disarm America and Donald Trump supporters and whatever.
It's kind of fascinating how they just bang that drum, even though we are giving what arguably is a little bit more of a progressive stance. Like, hey, the Second Amendment belongs to everyone. And they're saying it belongs to no one. Like, wait. The gun rights are human rights, aren't they? Apparently not. So one of the things that came to mind, given your background, when I was thinking about what I wanted to ask you today is the threats that we face as a country. We've got some quote unquote conflicts, some wars going on all over the U.S. and it seems, or not over the world, and it seems like we have sort of acted as world police. What do you think is currently like some of the top threats to security in the U.S.?
Look, the top three, and you can rank them however you want: Iran, the CCP, and Russia. I mean, that's the top three in my mind. And whether you're talking about terrorism in Iran, CCP and cyber intrusion, CCP and just dominating the global economy, CCP in Taiwan, or whether you're talking Vladimir Putin and his war in the Ukraine, or his global grab for power everywhere he can get it. I mean, those guys are adversaries of the United States of America. Iran's like an actual, real, solid enemy. I mean, they just want to blow us up. And so when you kind of put that into the rack and stack back here, what I try to do is tell groups that I speak to or engage with, like your groups, I'm like, I love your support of the Second Amendment. But what I need to do is try to break through and say all of these things are intertwined. All of these rights are being robbed by people in Washington, what I call government gangsters in the deep state. And whether it's 2A or freedom of speech or freedom of religion or freedom of press, or using a weaponized system of justice to prosecute people for political reasons, especially those who are utilizing their Second Amendment rights to protect their family and land, you can sort of insert whatever you want. So we're fighting this fight here. And then and this is under this administration, we're being distracted overseas against China invading a Taiwan, against Iran getting a nuclear bomb, against Russia invading another country and starting a world war on Harris's watch. And so we have to figure out a way to like bring all that together and say, can we solve a bunch of this? We're never going to solve it all. And for me, and I think Donald Trump's message is swamp the vote. Can we get enough folks from all these sectors to come in and say, hey, man, you're never going to be my 100% guy, but are you okay with being my 70 to 80% guy? That's the tough sell.
Yeah, I agree. I gave a speech the same day you did at Goals, and the kind of message that I stuck with was essentially just encouraging people to go vote because, as you know, the firearms owners of the U.S. typically are too busy working or, being independent to go get involved. They hate politics at this point.
Yeah.
I think one of the most difficult things for me has been, coming to terms with the fact that whether or not I like Donald Trump as a person, as a president, et cetera, of course, the economy was 10 times better and other things like that. There were some certain benefits last time, but his stance on the Second Amendment was a little bit shaky in certain areas. And I've had to give some deep thought to the fact that we have an active enemy, like you're talking about Iran. Well, we've got that with the Harris administration that is attempting to get in there, talking about actively stripping Americans of their rights. What do you see as some of the dangers if we don't get Trump in office?
Well, I quickly see the Harris administration just picking away our rights, starting with the Second Amendment. They're just going to come hard and fast for us and everyday Americans who want that. And that's just one issue. I think they're going to come hard and fast with the weaponized system of DOJ and come after everyday Americans. Like the FBI has already come after people in houses of Catholic worship because they're pro-Trump, whatever that is, pro-MAGA, whatever that means. They've literally raided parent-teacher conferences because parents who are brave enough to say, I want my kids to not learn gender dynamics at 6. I want them to learn.
Did that actually happen?
Yeah, in Virginia. And so, but these are things that, here's the thing, right? It's not a national news story, but it exemplifies the issue people care about, my kids' education, right? My right to pray wherever I want to pray and do whatever I want to do. And what the Harris-Biden administration has said, we don't care about those rights if you are in any way associated with a pro-MAGA movement or anti-Harris movement. And this is just the start of it. We've got a little bit of a bulwark right now, but if Harris wins, she's coming in and finishing the job. And she's going to completely ignore what's going on overseas. Remember, Harris and Biden gave Iran $7 billion. That's not like a made-up thing. Now Iran is basically at a nuclear bomb. You want these people in charge? By the way, who's in charge of protecting America right now? Joe Biden's on vacation in California. Seriously. And Harris is auditioning at the DNC. Who's in charge of the defense of this nation? Right? And
clearly not the executive branch.
And so what happens is the rogue elements of the agencies and departments that are led by these government gangsters come in and say, oh, we're going to issue a regulation. What does that mean? When did a regulation overtake a constitutional amendment or the Constitution itself? But decades of this and issues like 2A issues have been eroded in Washington, D.C. because these goons come in and say, oh, we're going to politicize this and we're going to write another layer of this. And the ATF director is going to come out and say, I'm going to ban bump stocks because it sounds cool for my boss who's in the White House and her name is Harris. I mean, this is what they'll do, but then they'll codify it. So if you don't want a chipping away of your rights, then in my opinion, you got to go with Donald Trump, because these people will come in across the board and take away our rights. And we haven't even gotten to the threats overseas, the 2 world wars they started on their watch, that they're going to send our children to go fight another Afghanistan.
How do you feel about, like, and I'm not asking from like a, political perspective. How does Kash feel about Kamala Harris sort of laughing about the fact that she's going to, quote unquote, fix the country in many different ways? She's made these claims and neglects the fact that she's currently in office. How does that make you feel?
I mean, the hilarious. It's sad. It's not like funny, but it's so sad that it's almost comedic tragedy. She's asked, how are you going to fix this? She's on day 1. I'm going to do X. Well, it's day 1,247. What have you been doing? The border, and we haven't talked about it. I'm a national security guy. The border is the confluence of everything wrong with the Harris-Biden administration. Not only are we flooding the streets with Chinese fentanyl, the narco traffickers are crushing us with heroin and cocaine, but the sex traffickers are coming in and endangering children's lives. And the terrorists are getting together with the narco traffickers down south and seeding terrorists into our country. That's not me saying it. That's the DHS and FBI reporting to Congress just last week that they lost 100 known terrorists that came into the country illegally. I don't believe that number is that low, but 100? I mean, just think about it. After 11 million already came in illegally. So I bring that up because Kamala Harris was put in charge of the border.
And this is yes, that's right. The border czar.
Yeah. And for anyone that's out there that says, no, that's a trumped up talking point by the MAGA media, go to Kamala Harris's Twitter feed, go to 2021, where she happily received the leadership position to control the border. That was her tweet. So either she is in charge or she's lying about it, but she'll cackle her way out of it and use word salad in the mainstream media to overrun the fact that our national security at the southern border is the most devastating crisis we have right now. And just like we're not watching overseas, nobody in a Washington leadership position is paying attention to the border. And so what they'll do is they'll say, oh, look at all the Second Amendment guys. We've got all this crime from Mexico. We can't have illegals can have guns, but we can't have Americans have guns. That's where, I mean, it's just wild stuff. They're letting illegals have voter ID to give them a step closer to voting in a U.S. election. So it's almost as if they care more about the rights of illegals than they do about Americans. And to me, that sums up Harris versus Trump. America first versus America last.
Do you think that the border crisis on the southern border is solvable easily, or is it a much more complicated process to get those people out and close it back up?
Well, it's not easy, but it's very doable.
Okay.
And having run some of President Trump's most consequential national security positions, you need a combination of forces. You need DOD to take the logistical airlift operation to deport 11 million illegal immigrants, and that's going to take time.
Goodness.
Can't
That's
do it on one.
significant. Yeah.
But we are the only logistical company on planet Earth that is like 50 times the size of Amazon that could coordinate that lift and has the aerial assets to do so. And we can do it if you have a commander in chief that says go. But on top of that, you got to re-implement some of Trump's policies. And this is where you don't have to guess, right? We sealed the border because we went down to Mexico and we told the Mexican government, either you're in on this with us or we're going to take you out of our way. And what do you know? Mexico showed up and ponied up resources and money, and the narco traffickers just went down. And so did the sex traffickers. And we just made it a priority to arm, not just with weapons, but with the legal requirements, our CBP officers, our customs guys, our border guys, and make it a priority to collect intelligence at the border. It's a whole of government approach, but when you deprioritize the national security of America and you say literally the three most important things to the Department of Department of Defense and the intel community is DEI, white rage, and climate change, you cannot have a successful border sealing operation. And I wish I was saying that in jest, but this is the Harris administration's top three priorities at the Department of Defense and the intel community.
Do you think that these people actually give a shit about all these immigrants? Because, I find that a lot of this is this weird emotional thing. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's, white women on the internet that want to run around and say, look at how not racist and sexist I am by supporting this marginalized group or whatever. Look at me. Look at me. It's all self-serving. Do you feel like these people actually give a shit about these illegal immigrants?
No. And I'll analogize it to this. And as a brown guy, I can say this. Look, I'm a first generation American. My parents grew up Democrats. They're not anymore, but they did because that was the thing. Why? Because the Democratic Party came to us and said, we are going to essentially give you whatever you want, vote for us. It was the Democratic way of buying votes with the brown and black communities of this country and the Hispanic communities. And for decades, the Democrats had the mainstream media going out there saying, we are the party of minorities. Well, what did they do for minorities? Because the two people responsible for imprisoning more black and brown men in America are currently the president and vice president of the United States. Literally, as Harris did it as Attorney General of California, disproportionately sentenced more black men to prison than any attorney general in U.S. history. And Joe Biden authored and signed the 1998 crime bill, which made it like a 3x penalty for minorities on crack offenses. Who undid that? President Trump with the I can't remember the First Step Act, I think it was called. And he allowed individuals, mostly minorities, to be released from prison from these early sentences. So the Democrats went after the minorities and tried to buy their votes. And now we see minorities going to Trump because they're hip to that situation. So the illegals, to me, are their next block. They're going out there saying, we care about illegal immigrants, free everything. Doesn't matter. But the scam I think they're running, the operation I think they're running is we're going to give every one of those guys an opportunity to vote in the 5 biggest states. We're going to give you guys driver's licenses so you can go and say, here, I'm so-and-so from state X. I'm going to vote here. And so that's their next voting block. And remember, the last election, whether you believe it was rigged or not, that's a separate conversation. 5 states, 45,000 votes. You think they can't get a million illegals to vote in this election?
Oh my God.
Based on what they've done in the past? So this is what we're up against. And this is why it's so consequential to get everyone who cares off their ass to vote. And that's the whole point to me. Like I'll go out there and I'll debate and I'll talk to people in great groups like yours. And if I can give them as much of the truth as I possibly can, and you vote based on that, I'll be happy with the result.
Do you think it's possible to hold the I don't like saying the Democrats, but it is in this case. Do you think it's possible to hold them accountable for what is basically electioneering Like it seems to me like that it's illegal to tamper with a national election in such a way. How do we hold them accountable? Like, I know, unfortunately, there's not like a motion for tar and feather in the US. I would love to see that come back, but like, how does that work? Is it possible?
You want to know the greatest form of accountability? And I'm not even a political guy. The greatest form of accountability I've learned for these people is to take them out of office. That's all they got. They don't have anything else. They don't have real careers. They have the fake news mafia putting them on TV, glorifying them in Hollywood, and giving them this boondoggle of a convention in Chicago where they hijacked the constitutional democratic process and anointed someone to be their nominee. Only the Democratic Party, the guys that are the projection con artists of our times, the biggest hypocrites, would go out and rig elections. Russiagate, 51 intel letter, Hunter Biden's laptop, and so on. And then they would only have the audacity to come in and say, well, Biden, you're out. We're installing this person, even though 14 million people voted for you. And so that's what we got to show the American public. If you take away their power, they are going to be crushed. And I know people want handcuffs and prison. And I'm like, here's the deal. Just use the Constitution equally on everybody. If you take them out of office and some people broke the law, great, we'll prosecute them. But we can't do any of it unless we win. You go O for O for O if we don't win. It's that simple. You get no accountability.
I guess it's just a non-starter if you don't have an advocate in the White House in reality. Kash, I know you got to go. Is there any points that you want the Gun Collective audience to know before we wrap up?
Well, one, I'm coming back because this is a great group, and I told you I would, and I will. 100%. You guys can put me on any show you want, and I'll come and talk to your community. And if I'm around in person, I'll come and show up there too. And we won't agree on everything, but I will come and have a heart-to-heart with you. And so selfishly, if you can support Government Gangsters, my bestseller that President Trump released 9 months ago and called it the roadmap for 2024, go to governmentgangsters.com or wherever books are sold, Amazon, whatever. 9 straight months as a bestseller. You want to take a wrecking ball to the deep state? I showed you in this book how to do it, and I pull out the government documents that they hid on you for corruption. If you don't like reading, we got you covered too. Steve Bannon turned Government Gangsters into a film. We are literally premiering it across the country, and if you can't wait for one of the premieres, good news, go to warroom.film, and you can stream it right now. Bannon called it the blockbuster documentary of the election cycle, and it speaks directly to 2A folks because your right is on the line, just like so many other rights that everyday Americans care about. And it shows you how to win back from this government against the enemies that are hurting us in the mainstream media and the radical left-wing agenda. And I promise you this one thing. If you vote based on the truth, we will save this country. And that's why these shows are incredibly important. It makes no difference if I go into a room full of MAGA supporters and talk to them because I know how they're going to vote. It's not that I don't need to motivate them. I'll still do it. To me, it makes more important consequential sense to go in and talk to groups of people like y'all that I don't get to talk to every day and show them that your vote and your background matters more than ever. And like I said, and I'll finish with this, like I said in Knoxville, if the GOA crew showed up in force on November 5th, the election's over.
I appreciate you, man. I am excited to have you back at some point. We will have to try and link up. You know, we got to go shoot sometime when it's probably after the election when you're actually free. I love it, man. Thank you so much. Check out Government Gangsters, guys. Also check out Vertex, vertx.com. Use the code TGC. Kash, we'll see you very, very soon. Thank you so much, brother.
Thanks, my friend.